Good evening, all. For the IGNA Endorsed Webmaster Series 2021. Sorry for the delay in starting the event. We had a few technical issues. So we'll be having only one talk today, which is a recorded session. And for the want of time, we'll have to skip the question and answer session. And today being a special event, we had a polling competition for the whole webinar series, and the winners for the session will be announced in the series. And we have Dr. Nammalva sir, Georgie sir, and Dr. Thangavelu sir to actually announce the winners for today. Nammalva sir, you're there, sir. Can you announce the winners? Nammalva sir? Thangavelu sir, you're there around, sir? Thangavelu sir? Thangavelu sir, you're there, sir?
I'm there. So I muted.
Yes, sir, you can announce. I request Thangavelu sir, Nammalva sir, and Georgie sir to announce the winners for the whole webinar series. We had a polling competition. I request Thangavelu sir and Nammalva sir to announce the winners.
So, Professor Biaran sir, we request you to announce the names of the winners, sir.
You have the listed winner?
Yes, sir. I'll just tell the name, you can announce, sir. Dr. Shalini Thangaraj is the first winner, sir. Dr. Shalini Thangaraj from Mahatma Gandhi Medical College.
Which college?
Shalini Thangaraj from Mahatma Gandhi Medical College.
It is there on the screen, sir.
Oh, 1 minute, I'll just have a look. Slides. Yes, correct. First prize is Dr. Saleh.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Divya from which college?
Stanley, sir. Divya and Mirna Sindhu both are from Stanley Medical College, sir.
I have a great honor to announce the names of such winners. I think the great player with the great the privilege that Dr. Kalevani has allowed me to announce the name of him. I'm very happy to announce Dr. Shalini Thangaraj is the has got the highest mark, and she's ranked as winner number one. Winner number 2 is Dr. Miruna Sindhu from Stanley Medical College. I'm an old Stanleyan. Stanleys are always proud of another Stanley's achievements. I'm very happy to announce your name. And next is Dr. Divya K. She's also from Stanley. I'm actually very, very happy to announce your name. As I told you, I'm a Stanley student.
Thank you, sir.
And the most important thing is what I saw was all the 3 are ladies. Pediatrics is no major portion of the pediatrics done by the ladies. And for pediatric nephrology also slowly has got to it. For example, in my own hospital, all the 3 are lady nephrologists. I'm the only person there. Now, all the 3 of you now, I must request you to take over pediatric nephrology. Dr. Georgie will not like what I said, but today you must do pediatric nephrology because that subject needs a lot of support, needs a lot of improvement. There's much to do for pediatric nephrology. Remember, young people like that can dedicate yourself. All good luck. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Kalevani, can I have a few words, sir?
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure,
Sir,
sir.
Georgie, sir. Can you provide the comments, sir? Can you give the comments? Georgie, sir. Georgie Abraham, sir. Georgie, sir.
Sir, I think sir is not audible. You can go ahead having a few words with the winners, sir.
Yeah, I'm really very, very happy to see that it looks like the daughters are winning the game. It's full of daughters. I'm looking for sons in the ground, not seeing much. Congrats to the winner. Dr. Shalini from Mahatma Gandhi Medical College, Dr. Miruna, Sindhu and Divya from Stanley Medical College. The Stanleyan spirit still continues. See, generally they say that students, 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Probably all three of you have worked very hard to get this reward. We appreciate the hard work, and Professor Nammalwar, my teacher, what we are today is only because of him. Like that, probably you will get the golden words from my own teacher. Probably whatever the specialty, whether you take pediatric nephrology or pediatric critical care, whatever you take, probably we all pray God Almighty to give you all successful career in the rest of your life. And at the same time, I also like to express my greetings and respect to the teachers who trained you. From Stanley, I could recollect Dr. Ganesh and Professor Ganesh and Professor Aravind. From Mahatma Gandhi, I think Professor Gunasekaran was there earlier. I don't know who is now. So I pay my respects and greetings to teachers who trained you all. Thank you very much, Kalaivani, for the opportunity. Over to Professor George Abraham. Sir?
Georgie sir, you're there, sir? Georgie sir? I think sir is not heard, sir. Like, we'll move on to the first speaker. So already we are lagging time. We just have one talk for the day. The next talk on immunology of renal transplantation will be taken up live tomorrow at the same time between 6:30 to 7:30. And so today we have a recorded session by Dr. Asim from Pakistan, who is going to give a talk on interesting case series of pediatric glomerular disease.
So, Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to all my senior and junior colleagues. I am privileged to be part of this academic continuing activity, and I'm thankful to the Dr. Palwani and her team for making me part of this great academic activity. The task today given to me was regarding my clinical experience and the clinical observations which I had regarding the glomerular disorders. So following the footsteps of Dr. Bhaga as in his previous presentation, I'd like to present a case series of different interesting cases related to thrombotic microangiopathy. So we'll proceed further. So yes, we'll move forward to our further case series. So this is my first case which I'd like to present. He was a young boy, 4 years old. Safiz was resident of Karachi. He was admitted with us to OPD with the complaints of anuria and generalized body swelling from the last 2 days. On a patient developed anuria and generalized swelling of the body after a preceding history of acute diarrhea 2 weeks back, and now the patient was having decreased urine output, so was brought to the nephrology OPD. So he was admitted for the first time with us. When he came to us, his workup was done and he was found to have anemia, that was hemoglobin which was 5.9 and a platelet which was 73,000. So they were having a bicytopenia with evidence of hemolysis and the peripheral film showing the Burr cells. There was no evidence of malarial infection. So his electrolytes were done and the renal functions were done, which showed a creatinine of 6.1 and a raised LDH with the normal complement levels. His LFTs were normal. So he was proceeded further and was admitted in the nephrology ward. Patient had clinical and lab evidence which was pointing to thrombotic microangiopathy, query the hemolytic uremic syndrome. So we proceeded further. His urine DR was showing some evidence of nephritis in the presence of RBCs and WBCs, but with a suspicion of urine infection also. So his culture was also sent along with it. Ultrasound abdomen, which was done at that point, was normal. He had normal kidneys with no significant raised echogenicity. The hepatomegaly was not there, and there was no other visceromegaly on the ultrasound examination. He underwent peritoneal dialysis and was remained admitted with us for a few days until his lab and clinical parameters improved and his acute kidney injury and hematology was resolved. So he was discharged with a diagnosis of thrombotic microangiopathy from the hemolytic uremic syndrome. Exactly couldn't be pointed out that it could be an atypical one, because in the presence of normal complement, for the practical clinical purpose, we consider it to be not to be an atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome. So this was the entity. So after discharge, the patient remained well for a few days at home. But at the home, the parents complained that he had fever, lethargy, and had decreased appetite. The fever was significant enough and was documented up to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. He started having complaints of non-specific body aches, but it was not associated with any hematuria, dysuria, or any other extrarenal manifestations. So he gradually became pale and anemic, and that was the point when the parents decided to bring him to the OPD, because they were delaying the previous complaints because of the ongoing pandemic. So ultimately it was anemia which led the parents to bring the child to the hospital. So at that point, his anthropometry was acceptable. His weight was as previously on fifth centile. The pressures were normal this time. They were the 90th centile. There was mild pedal edema and not significant any rash or any joint involvement. The only positive finding was severe anemia, which was the child was having. So this was his presentation at the second time when he came to us. So at that time, now the examination revealed a significant hepatomegaly, which was 3 centimeter, and the total liver span was 12 centimeter. On top of it, he had the tip of the spleen, which was also appreciated. Otherwise, there was no evidence of free fluid in the abdomen. Other systemic examination was unremarkable. So we made the differential diagnosis in the background of the fever for 2 weeks and with evidence of hepatomegaly and anemia, query of enteric fever or malaria, or it can be a relapse of the hemolytic uremic syndrome. And of course, there's an overlapping entities of hematological disorders. So we consider the malignancy in our differential also. So going through this line of the clinical presentation, we reworked up him on the second admission. This time again, the anemia and thrombocytopenia was appreciated. The peripheral film was normal with no evidence of hemolysis, which was proved to be, which was also proved by normal retic count. So, but the CRP was raised, complements again were not decreased this time. The LDH was raised this time and was much more than the previous admission of his. So there was some evidence, there was no evidence of the renal failure this time. He had normal renal functions and normal liver function. So this time with normal complements with raised LDH, and there's evidence of bicytopenia with no hemolytic evidence encountered this time. So we proceeded further. The urine was bland. There was no evidence of nephritis, neither the infection appreciated on the urine DR. So excluding our existing diagnosis, and we took our oncology team on board, and oncology laboratory investigations were done, and as is evident, we found a bicytopenia with the presence of 60% atypical mononuclear cells, and which diverted our diagnosis in the line of malignancy. So his further workup was proceeded, and we started on with an ultrasound abdomen, and the clinical entity of hepatomegaly was confirmed on the ultrasound, which showed a hepatomegaly and splenomegaly, and mesenteric lymphadenopathy was also appreciated. Proceeding further, for the further evidence, we had a positive lymphadenopathy in the inguinal and the neck regions, so making the diagnosis towards the malignancy. This bone marrow was done, which confirmed the presence of 24% blast cells in the bone marrow, and the CSF was done, which was also showing the presence of the blast cells. So there was CNS involvement also in this child. The immunophenotyping, which turned out, showed to be a T cell type of acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So considering all of this his course of the illness, starting from the diarrheal episode, which may be the cause, and ultimately the child presented for the first time to us with a thrombotic microangiopathic entity, and then turning his course towards the presence of blast cells and the evolving systemic findings. So the diagnosis finally turned to be a T cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and is considered to be a malignancy associated thrombotic microangiopathy. So it was the malignancy which had its presentation with a TMA entity. So that was an interesting observation which we had, and I like to share this entity with you, my colleagues, at this forum. So this made our confirmation strong of all the flow charts and algorithms which we follow for our hemolytic uremic entities syndrome. So we have malignancy associated TMS, which is well recognized, as is proved at multiple academic literature. This is just for the juniors. As we all realize, is a TMA is a combination of thrombosis, which is microvascular, thrombocytopenia, and involvement of kidneys and brain. Has its in the umbrella of TMA covers the TTP and HUS. I'll not go into the details. So the pathogenesis of the malignancy-related TMA is not completely understood. It is considered to be a manifestation of the tumor itself. It can be a complication of chemotherapy. In the setting of bone marrow transplant, sometimes we give the treatment for the malignancy, can lead to the development of TMA. So we can have a TMA manifestation preceding our malignancy, or it can come after our treatment itself. So what really happening is the tumor itself is invading the microvasculature and ultimately providing a nidus for the thrombogenic phenomena and leading to the hemolytic entity which is happening around in the microvasculature, presenting as hemolysis and renal failure. So it has been suggested that prognosis is better in TMAs who occurs as a manifestation of the underlying cancer rather than as a complication of the malignancy of the therapy for the malignant tumors. So this literature just highlights the different types of malignancies which can have associated thrombotic microangiopathy. So our hematological malignancies can be appreciated in this table. So similar case reports have been reported in the pediatric nephrology. In the pediatric age group, the child had similar presentation, and later turned out to have a diagnosis of malignancy with initial manifestation of TMA. There was a second case of 11 years old girl which was reported in VMJ. She initially had a TMA manifestation and then later had development of lymphadenopathy and hepatomegaly and ultimately appearance of large cells also. So was an interesting observation. These are some of the case reports which have been made in the adult population. So HUS can occur due to underlying malignancy. If HUS is persistent, the atypical feature, then underlying malignancy should be considered in the differential, as we are always having overlapping hematological manifestations, and initial films cannot be positive for malignant disorders, but the things are always evolving. So we should always keep the patients in our follow-up and close follow-up clinically and lab-wise. So here we end our first case. After this, I'll proceed on to my second case. So this girl had also had an interesting spectrum of her illness. She was 6 years old, female, 20 kg when she presented to us. Was a known case of Addison's disease and was on replacement therapy since the age of 3 years. Was in follow-up at the endocrine team with us. But this time she had an acute illness from last 3 days when the child developed fever, vomiting, and abdominal pain and was admitted. So at this time of presentation, the child was pale looking, sick, oriented, but with had an evidence of bleeding per oral. Her vitals were normal with slightly blood pressure, which was on the lower side. It was at the 50th centile. The extremities were cold otherwise. A per-abdominal examination revealed a non-tender hepatomegaly. Rest of the systemic examination was unremarkable. Previously, at the age of 3 years, she was diagnosed as Addison and was on her replacement therapy, otherwise partially vaccinated with 4 other siblings, and there was no family history of any significant illness. So was admitted with the suspicion of dengue fever, and she was and during her admission she was noticed to have deranged renal functions and the pressures which were now on the rising side. So the nephrology team was taken on board at that point in time, and the investigations at that time done, they showed a hemoglobin which was 4.5 in a very low platelet counts, and along with this hematological manifestation he had evidence of renal failure. So again, with evidence of bicytopenia and thrombocytopenia and deranged renal functions, we proceeded further, and the peripheral smear which showed the presence of schistiocytes and a raised LDH, which was quite significant. The complements otherwise were normal. There was no significant evidence of infection this time. So again, with the evidence of anemia, thrombocytopenia, and renal failure, so the clinical working diagnosis regarding the renal department was of a thrombotic microangiopathy. So we proceeded further. The ultrasound was done and was normal as expected. There was normal echo texture, normal size, and no abnormality was detected on the ultrasound of the kidneys and bladder. So workup was done. The clinical picture, AKI was managed, her hypertension was managed, and that was good enough that she didn't require dialysis and improved on the conservative measures. She required the transfusion of the PET cells otherwise. So the dengue fever, which was suspected as the initial, at the end of the day when the report was collected, so it turned out to be positive. So this was an interesting, again, manifestation that the dengue was associated with evidence of thrombotic microangiopathy, having significant renal failure and evidence of hemolysis. So she was managed with all the antihypertensive measures. Her blood pressure was taken care of. She was continued with her hydrocortisone and chlorinef therapy and was kept admitted for some days. After her discharge, she was followed up in nephrology clinic. At that time, she had normal renal functions. Her blood pressure were well controlled and was followed up in the plan of reducing the antihypertensives. She was maintained on the long-term Addison disease replacement therapy with the monitoring of the electrolytes. So this entity showed us another phase of the thrombotic microangiopathy, which was associated with infections, and this time it was the dengue fever, which was there, which led to the manifestation of TMA. So again, we went through some of the case reports which had thrombotic microangiopathy in the primary dengue fever, and presenting with hypertensive crisis. A few of these are adults studies, where the pediatric patient was ours, which I appreciated. These two previous cases were of the adult patients. So coming to my third case of this series of the thrombotic microangiopathy is again an interesting one. And I think with the passage of time and all of us having clinical experience of managing different spectra of the diseases, we'll complete the list of the TMA of all the secondary TMAs, even which we go through the books. So the third one is a case of a girl who was 10 years old, otherwise was well with no previous comorbids, was a student of class 6. She was presented to us with a short history of again oliguria, renal failure, and shortness of breath, pointing towards the acute kidney injury. She was not febrile, having no significant extrarenal manifestation, no skin or joint involvement, no evidence of any autoimmune entity in the past or with this current illness. Previously had no history of any proteinuria or any renal involvement or renal calculi, and the drug history was unremarkable. So on examination, her anthropometry was at the 50th and 25th centile with significant acidosis, anemia, and generalized edema. Her pressures were at the 99th centile. Other vitals were acceptable. She was afebrile and maintaining SATs at room temperature. The skin was normal. There was no evidence of any petechial rash or any joint involvement. The mucosa was normal. Systemic examination just revealed wet lungs, pointing to her acute renal failure, that he had bilateral crepitations. The kidneys were not palpable, and other systemic examination was unremarkable in this girl. So was an acute presentation of the acute kidney injury. So our initial impression was of an acute kidney injury, and either this is a rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis form of presenting as acute kidney injury. So we proceeded further. Her lab workup this time showed an anemia of 8.3, but there was no evidence of thrombocytopenia. There was no evidence of hemolysis on the peripheral film. The LDH was normal, but she had significant renal failure. The creatinine was 10 with a GFR of 12. The urine showed presence of proteinuria. No hematuria was appreciated in this girl. Ultrasound again was normal with normal echogenicity and normal renal size. So his initial management, as is expected for the acute kidney injury, was hemodialysis, which was initiated through a right internal jugular double lumen catheter. And his serology was also sent. His C3 and ANA was sent, considering her female entity presenting with acute renal shutdown. So they were negative. Hepatitis B and C was normal. Anti-DS DNA was normal. So considering the normal serology with normal complements in the background of normal renal kidney size, so we opted for the renal biopsy in this child. So the renal biopsy showed us gloms which were 10 in number, and they had acute ischemic changes. There were fibrin thrombi which were noted in the capillary lumen, and there were arteriolar involvement was also noticed on the biopsy. The tubules were normal. So the conclusion of acute thrombotic microangiopathy of both the glomerular and the arteriolar pattern was made on the histopathology under the microscope. So there were thrombosis which were appreciated in the absence of no clinical and the lab manifestation of hemolysis. No anemia or no hemolytic evidence was appreciated, but the biopsy showed us the presence of thrombi. So these were the histology picture of the same patient. We can appreciate the glomerular thrombosis which was there. A more closer look of the same thrombus formation in the glomerular tuft. which was reported on the histopathology. So the outcome of this child, she remained dialysis dependent and with permanent angio access through her right brachiobasalic transposition, which was made for her, and developed chronic kidney disease. But in this presentation or this form of the thrombotic microangiopathy, we were unable to appreciate a cause, and there was no evidence, clinical evidence of hemolysis in this child. It was only the biopsy which showed us the presence of thrombi and evidence of microangiopathy in the grams and arterioles. So she was followed up with us for 3.5 years. Unfortunately, ended up because of the complication of the burst AV fistula during dialysis. So this led us to the conclusion of a thrombotic microangiopathy with uncertain etiology, and this child presented with a normal underlying renal scans, only the biopsy findings of the presence of thrombi in this child. So this was of the TMA, which was of uncertain etiology, and AKI presenting with a brief duration of symptoms, no evidence of microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, and showing TMA on renal biopsy. So thrombotic microangiopathy, just to re-emphasize at the close to my presentation, is the syndrome of thrombotic microangiopathy. For all the juniors who are beginning their learning in the nephrology, the clinical features of MAHA and thrombocytopenia, and organ injury in the kidneys and in the CNS. So it can be hereditary and acquired as we go through all the complete list. So we have the primary TMAs, we have secondary TMAs, and that can be the TMA can be because of the entities like hemolytic uremic syndrome, or because of the TTP, because of the underlying Adams deficiencies, either congenital or acquired one. But this cluster of the cases which I have presented had a secondary etiologies to begin with. They had a malignancy which was presenting as TMA, the dengue fever which had its association and presentation with the thrombotic picture, both the clinically and lab-wise, and having renal failure. And the last one were the thrombi, which were appreciated on renal biopsy with no clinical evidence of hemolysis. So with this, I'd like to thank you all for making me part of your team, of this academic learning team. I hope this brief overview of the interesting cases was of help to my junior and a recall for my senior colleagues. And inshallah, I'll be part of the team and will be adding my expertise and my learning and observations with all my pediatric nephrology colleagues around the globe. I thank you all for being with me.
Thangavelu sir, like I think we are done with the time. Like, can we close the session with a closing remark from you, sir?
Yeah, thank you. I would like to thank the speaker for the wonderful talk. I'd like to thank Professor Namalwar for announcing the results of the students, Dr. Shalini Tangaraj from Mahatma Gandhi Medical College, Dr. Miruna Sindhu from Stanley Medical College, and Divya K from Stanley Medical College. As Sir said, Sir is the teacher for all of us, teacher of teachers. That probably all of you can take up a specialty. I don't know, nephrology, whatever specialty you take, or even general pediatrician also, I think you do your job very well. Congratulations. Also, I also like to thank your parents for bringing up such a nice, good students and your teachers. Thank you. Best wishes for your exams as well as for your future career. Thank you, Dr. Kalivani. Thanks, Kalivani, for arranging such an interesting webinar series. Gave opportunity for many students and many faculty to express their talk, as well as the students to participate and win. And you evoked a lot of interest among the DNB and MD postgraduates to take nephrology. Thank you, Dr. Kalivani. Thank you, Dr. Abraham.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to all three winners. Thank you so much. Thanks for participating in all the webinar series. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Tangvil sir. Thank you, Namalva sir. We'll close the session for today, and tomorrow we'll have the session between 6:30 to 7:30 on immunology of renal transplantation. Thank you so much.